Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the East Lyme Board of Finance regularly scheduled meeting. The day is Wednesday, October 14th, and the time is now 7:02 p.m. We will begin our meeting this evening with delegations. I don't know if there's anybody that would like to address the Board of Finance. I see Brendan Crowley and Rebecca in the attendee room. If you would like to address the board, can you please raise your hand? If you would like to address the Board of Finance, please raise your hand. Okay. It looks like nobody would like to address this evening, so we'll move right along and go into the minutes portion of the meeting. We'll start with the regular meeting minutes dated September 9th, 2020. Yes, Anna.
I did see on the attendees that someone does have their hand up.
You did. Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, we will go back. Rebecca has her hand up. Hi, Rebecca. Would you like to address the Board of Finance this evening?
Yes, during my agenda item, please.
Yes. Okay, very good. I'll call you in at that point.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, so getting back to the regular meeting minutes of September 9th. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns? Did everybody have a chance to review them? Yes, Ann Santoro.
Yeah, I noticed that on the first page in the delegations portion, and Steve Larson was speaking, I think in the very in the next to the last sentence, where he urged them, being the Board of Finance, not to come together. I think he urged us to come together. I think that doesn't belong there. If
I was going to bring up the same exact thing.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I remember hearing him say he wanted us to come together. Yeah.
That was a main point of his presentation, right? That was it for me.
Okay, I agree with that change. Is everybody on board with that change?
Yes.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns about those meeting minutes from any of our board members? Okay, so I actually have one requested change to make to the minutes. This is on page 4, and it's about 7 paragraphs down. The last sentence says Ms. Johnson said that it is $24,000 in total with the encumbrance. So with Anna Johnson's permission, I would suggest the following change. Ms. Johnson said that the remaining balance is $10,000. Without the encumbrance, the balance would be $24,000. Would you agree with that, Anna, as to your remarks made that evening?
Just let me look at the report a second, if you will.
Of course. we had been talking about the financial report having a remaining balance of $10,000 in the sidewalk repair account, and there was an encumbrance of $14,000. So I had asked at the time Anna Johnson to clear, just to make that clearer for me, because I didn't quite understand that. And she had made reference that if the encumbrance were to be taken away, then the balance would have been $24,000. But the balance of $10,000 in the sidewalk account included the encumbrance of the $14,000, if that makes sense. It's a minor
So
change, but
there was a $14,000 encumbrance and then a $10,000 balance.
right. So in the minutes, Anna Johnson, that last sentence would be incorrect. Would you agree? Ms. Johnson said that it is $24,000 in total with the encumbrance.
Well, the total in the account was $24,000, which included the $14,000 encumbrance and the $10,000 remaining balance,
But we were talking about the remaining balance here.
which would be $10,000.
So I guess I am asking you, would you be willing to accept the following change? Ms. Johnson said that the remaining balance is $10,000. Without the encumbrance, the balance would be $24,000.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification again. Any other comments, questions, or suggestions on the meeting minutes?
Yes, my apologies for being late. The clock in this room was falling behind. I have on page 6 where it's 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph, Mr. Steele noted, and for the body cams, this was estimated at around 120,000. That should be $125,000.
Okay. Was that the only change to that sentence?
Yes, that was the only one. And then paragraph below, Mr. Nickerson noted that they do not have the authority to pull money rather than they, so it's clear it'd be Board of Finance does not have the authority to pull money out to spend elsewhere.
Okay, I agree with that.
That's all I've got.
So if no one else has any corrections or suggestions or comments, can I please have a motion to approve the minutes as corrected this evening?
I'll move to approve the East Lyme Board of Finance regular meeting minutes as amended of Wednesday, September 9th, 2020.
Thank you, Ann Santoro. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Ann Shichello. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. 6-0. Thank you, everybody. Let's move on to the meeting minutes of Thursday, September 17th. This was our special meeting. Comments, questions, concerns from the board members?
I just have one. It might be just a typographical error, but the bottom of the first page, I think it ended with the word in, the very last sentence at the bottom of the page, but maybe you meant it should be instead. Should that word be instead of in?
So actually, no, I think there might have been a slight error in the copying of the documents. I went on to the town website and I pulled down the minutes from this meeting.
Okay.
And there's actually a page 2.
Ah, okay.
Oh,
Okay.
all right.
There was a page 2 and it was quite lengthy. So I don't know if anybody else caught that and was able to read it. If not, there's a few things we can do. I can read it for the record now, or we could just table this and approve it next meeting after you've had a chance to review it. What's the board's pleasure?
I would table it and then we can review it next time.
Agreed.
Yeah. That way we can read it and look for the typos and
Mm.
Okay, very good. That's what we'll do. We'll table this one. Hannah, if you could please make a note to bring this back next month, or if there is no meeting next month in December. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to the next agenda items. With the reports, we have Marianna Stevens and Jeff Newton on the call with us, and we'd like to get a update from the Board of Education.
Thanks, Camille. Appreciate it. Two items just wanted to update on. One being the school projects. I don't know, Anna, if you provided any financials or remaining money most recently, to the Board of Ed. I just wanted to put it out there based off of Ray O'Connor's numbers. We're looking at about $210,000 that at this point, returning from the building projects that wouldn't be used. So just wanted to provide an update. Obviously, the projects aren't closed out yet. We're definitely moving in that direction and getting very close to finalizing, what's left. So there's another building committee meeting tomorrow evening. So one agenda specific to the school projects. Then they're talking about the police station and emergency building. So just wanted to give an update on that number. And again, and I wasn't sure if you had provided anything recently, but that should align with what Ray has provided you, I believe, around there.
Yeah, I'll have to reach out and touch base with Ray tomorrow.
Okay, all right, that's all right. The document that or the information he sent, I'll be sharing out tomorrow night at the building committee. But just wanted to update on that number. That's sitting at $210,080.84 currently. So just an update on the school projects. Also wanted to wanted to keep you apprised, as we said we would do, on COVID expenditures and costs. We had forwarded that document to everybody. Hopefully everybody got a copy of that document that I had referenced at the last Board of Finance meeting. We provided the Board of Ed an update of that document, and just kind of wanted to give some new numbers with that. PPE dollars. We've purchased at this point all the PPE items that we need, masks and plexiglass, face shields. From the last report out, we had given you a total estimated about $187,000, almost $200,000. Went up a little bit because we got the final orders completed, and we are set as of right now. We don't need any more masks. We don't need any more plexiglass. It went up about $3,000. So that's just a change from the last report that we had given you. We went down $3,000 in instructional supplies. So we had projected out a total estimate at around $20,748, and that is down $3,000. So kind of a break even there between PPE expenses up and instructional supplies down. The big one that just wanted to touch base on mostly was staffing with our virtual program. The numbers for virtual students continue to increase. Obviously, I'm sure you all know what we're dealing with the COVID cases and higher numbers. Right now the high school is working remotely until next Thursday. They'll be back. They've been out for a two-week period. I had to close the Libby Haynes yesterday for a day. So we keep getting these cases that pop up and forces us, because of the contact tracing, to close buildings. So we've done it at the middle school, we've done it at Libby Haynes, the high school. Niantic Center we had to dismiss early. Only building Flanders is done well so far, so we'll keep our fingers crossed for Flanders that we don't have to have them go through this. But it probably will continue. This is the pattern I think we're going to be in for a while, if not, through the holidays. It would be great to, again, the transmission numbers, go down across the community, but at this point, this is what we're facing. So a lot of families have decided, we keep getting requests to move to the virtual side of things. So we have well over 300 students that are part of our virtual program now, all virtual. Back when we had provided the original numbers, we have since, the 2 positions weren't filled at that point. So we had 2 teacher positions that we have now filled, a special ed position and a grade 4 position. So that was an additional $150,490 for those positions. We're hoping not. I think we're going to end up probably needing more staff. Right now we have a 4th grade virtual class that's at 30 kids in one class and a 2nd grade class with 26 kids. So those numbers are pretty high. We're holding tight, with that. But if more kids obviously go virtual, we're going to have to figure out some other options and either add more teachers or see what we're going to add more paraprofessionals, something along those lines. We're still trying to work through what's going to be the best scenario in that sense. And we did need to add a little bit more para support since the last time we reported out. So that was an additional $37,000. We're down 20,000 in unemployment. So there was some savings there. Which was good. So the total projected expenditures since the last report out, the change has been an increase of 170,217, which leaves us after the grants, applying the grants, with a total estimated number of 1,046,841.60. But remember, we're planning, we froze the budget. So we're hoping to capture about $400,000 off of that budget freeze this year and apply that money to this. We gave back the $500,000 from last school year. So hopefully that $900,000 will help offset, and then the $460,000 in grant funding as well, we will be receiving back. So between those 3, hopefully those are covering a good chunk of it. And we're hopeful not to come to the Board of Finance for a special appropriation. We're really working hard to cover these costs ourselves. Just again, wanted to keep you apprised of kind of where the numbers were. We do anticipate the staffing numbers for the virtual world to probably continue to go up some. But at this point, that's where we're sitting. I'm happy to send this document to you again. I shared it with the Board of Ed last night. Mariana and I went through it, and tomorrow I can send it over via email to you, Camille, and then you can disperse it.
That'd be great, Jeff. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any questions for that staffing piece is the biggest one, for right now. Again, we don't anticipate any more purchases for PPE requirements. We have plenty of masks, plenty of equipment, plenty of plexiglass. Like I mentioned last time, I don't know what we're going to do with all this plexiglass when this is all done, but figure out something. It's just a staffing cost that we're watching right now.
Plexiglass boat races.
Something, cover the turf field. I don't know. Maybe we turn it into an ice skating rink. I don't know. I tell you.
Jeff, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I lost you at the end. You said that the total is 1,046,000 something. And then you said you're looking at $400,000 of that to be covered in grants.
Yeah, Peter, let me run through that again.
And then I lost the next sentence.
Yep. So the net projected COVID-related expenditures are sitting at $1,046,841.
Yeah.
Now that's after applying the 460 in grant funding.
After the grant. Okay.
Yeah, that's after the grant funding applied.
Okay.
Yes. So to help offset that, now it's down to the 1,046,000. To help offset that 1,046,000. We've got the $500K that we returned from last year. Hopefully we can apply that. And then with the budget freeze, we anticipate saving another $400,000, which would be applied.
Okay.
We'd look to apply this as well. So there's 900,000 of the 1,046,000.
So last year's return and then projected this year's return.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
That's
what we're shooting for and I think with the freeze, we're hopeful to, we got a heavy a heavy freeze going on right now. And I think, not having, kids on site, every day right now, and teachers not using as much, paper, supplies, equipment, I think, hopefully we'll be able to continue to save in those areas.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So again, I'll send this document over and happy to, to answer any questions and, as we move forward. I think it'd be best. I know we talked, Camille, I know we're talking about, we're looking at quarterly, but we're happy to come monthly and just keep projecting out, especially November, December, January. These are some pivotal months coming up, with budget season 2 coming around the corner. We want to keep you in the loop, obviously, on that.
No, if you're willing, we're more than thankful for that, Jeff. So, yeah, appreciate that.
No, absolutely.
Does anybody have any questions for the superintendent?
I do. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Anna.
Thanks for providing the information, and thanks especially for the last page, which is the summary of your funding, from basically the Federal CARES Act. So that's helpful. Just to let you know, I had asked, and the board agreed that we're going to try as a kind of, action item list for ourselves to keep track of these various funding sources, because there's a number of threads of them, if you will. Some come directly through FEMA, some come through Board of Education, State Board of Education, some come through OPM at the state level. So this is a great tool that I think, perhaps Anna can also use. I just was wondering about the transportation piece, because I know last time Mariana said that she was able to, get a reduction, because of fewer students on the buses. And do you anticipate that changing anymore? And is there any more wiggle room with the bus company? Are they willing to kind of keep the dialogue open with you?
I think they're willing to keep the dialogue open. I don't know how much more wiggle room we'll get. We actually, with the relationship that Mariana has with the bus company, we're one of the luckier districts. I'm hearing from a lot of districts that bus companies aren't even budging on giving anything back, at all. We've been able to, what was it, Mariana, 37,000, I think, that we saved for the Wednesdays.
Yeah, and it's on the bottom of that sheet. So when
I saw that.
So that hasn't changed, and they aren't charging, because I just got the bill for September and for October, so they are giving us a little bit of a discount. I just didn't have a chance today because I got it late, like 4 o'clock, and I was working on something else. But they did give us a little bit of a discount, Jeff, because we were closed for some of the days, so we didn't use all of the buses, like at the when we closed at the middle school, I think, one day, and then the high school.
Yeah, but the high school closed the last 2 weeks. Yeah.
So it looks like they are being pretty accommodating. And as Jeff mentioned, with other districts, it doesn't seem like they're being as accommodating. So
that's
so
good.
that number might go up a little bit. But again, that projection is just through December. So that could be higher if we stay in hybrid and late, further in January, February, March. I just did through December.
Right.
Curious to see what they do with the high school now that it's been, closed for most of last week and, and this week. So that might help us.
Is there ever, this is maybe silly, but is there ever a possibility of like the use of smaller buses? Like, I don't know what's in their fleet and what their, what their union requires, et cetera, labor issues. But I'm just thinking about the economy of it, and using tinier buses for fewer kids,
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, it's working well right now with many of them because of the number of student participants did go up some after we started the year and got in a few weeks.
Okay.
And for spacing out purposes with COVID, it's working well. Depending on how small you get, you're going to have kids much closer together. That's one concern. But Marianne, I don't know if they'd.
So, well, the other piece of it, Anne, is so we contract with them for X number of type 1 buses, which are the larger buses, and X number of type 2. So they don't just have extras, so that if we went to the type 2,
Gotcha.
then we needed the bigger buses again, what would we do? So that's that's kind of, there's such an expense that when we contract with them, they might have some extras, but not as many as we would need.
Okay.
If I can comment on that, Ann, I was on a committee years ago with the seat buses, the ones that run around New London and Norwich, and that same question was asked because a lot of the buses run around empty. And they said the expense is really in labor, not so much whether it's a big bus or a little bus. And, that the savings would be nominal because.
Right. You still have to do the runs, you
You have to do the runs. You don't get that much better gas mileage, that sort of thing. So.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this too, I think your ability to, change those runs is limited. I mean, you can't have kids on buses interminably, so,
Right.
Yeah.
okay. Just
Correct.
Yeah.
thinking out loud here, but.
Yeah, it's a good question.
No, it is, yeah, and to Peter's point, I was just going to say that the price differential between the daily cost for the type 1 buses and type 2 buses is nominal. It's not a big difference.
Right. Okay. Well, good that you have some savings and that, you have a good working relationship with them and they're not going to gouge you for services not rendered. So that's good. Yeah. Thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? Just one question for you, Jeff or Mariana. I'm just curious, how are we doing with the rollout of the one-to-one devices? Are we still on a backlog of devices come in?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I'm glad you mentioned that, Camille. I should have said something. Yeah, we've been backlogged some, but we just heard recently that hopefully within the next 2 weeks, we'll have all of our devices come in. They were trickling in sets of, sometimes we get like 16 and we get 100, but we're supposed to get the rest of the full order within the next 2 weeks. So we're starting a disbursement next week, and we're starting with a K1 and 2, and then we'll work our way up, from there. I know Mariana's working on the insurance aspect of things with Amy Drown for parents. So we're well underway and ready to get those out to everybody. So thanks for asking.
Very good. Thank you for that update. Okay.
All right, well,
So, yes, John.
Jeff, how many does that entail? How many devices?
we got, Mariana, I don't know the exact number. It was for every student. So we've got, roughly 2,700 kids, John. So I think it was right around 2,500 because there was some that we still had in district they were using for the lower grades. So probably around that 2,500 number.
Okay, so you start at the lower grades and work your way up.
Yeah, we're working our way up from there to get those devices in their hands. There's a lot of families that are still struggling. The ones that we did have, we gave out. So we gave out well over 400 or 500 devices that are in the hands temporarily of parents and families. So we're setting up that cycle. They drive through, they drop off, the existing device. If they borrowed one, they get their new device, and off they go. There's a whole process that we have to have them sign and work through.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll keep you posted on that as well.
Thank you. Okay, so if there's no further questions, we'll move on to the next report.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next month, and I'll send this document to you tomorrow.
I appreciate it, Jeff, and thanks,
Okay.
Mariana. We'll see you next month.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, so next on the agenda is a report from the First Selectman, who is not with us this evening, but we have the Deputy First Selectman, Kevin Siri, with us.
Thank
Is
you,
there
Camille.
anything you'd like to report to us?
Sure, a few things here. The contract is in hand and signed for the public safety contract with Noble Construction. Tomorrow, as I think Jeff pointed out, there's a building committee meeting, and that'll be on their agenda because at our last Board of Select meeting, the project has been basically turned over now under the direction of the town building committee. So they have their meeting tomorrow to discuss that. Also, too, within the last couple of weeks, the town had Mr. Nickerson and I believe Mr. Burgon met with some representatives of Eversource to go over some of the concerns over the last couple storms, and not so much the fact that we understand sometimes that there's a delay in getting power restored. It was the lack of communication that was of the utmost concern. So apparently there was some discussion had, and there'll be some further meetings that have a resource so that we can provide a better estimate to the members of the town and so forth like that as to when they can have power restored or a tree cleared from a road as well, because we all know that was a big problem. Tomorrow at 5 o'clock at the band shell in McCook's, because we have to do this outdoors, there'll be some promotions within the police department. Lieutenants will be made. We've had some retirements and sergeants, so there's a couple sergeants being made, and the few officers that have been hired to fill retirements and the one that was approved in the budget that have been sworn in for a while will be sort of officially sworn in tomorrow in a ceremony at McCook's at about 5 o'clock. Absentee ballots were up right around 5,000 having been returned so far, and that's 2.5 times about what they normally would get. And we've still got obviously a few weeks to go on that, and I would think that that may even increase a little bit with the uptick we've seen reported in the cases of COVID statewide and in New London County as well. It's really busy in the clerk's office. They close at 12:30, and the rest of the day is dedicated to the processing of the absentee ballots. They've got that one assistant that Karen's brought in temporarily. They are getting help when available from the tax collector's office, as well as someone from Parks and Rec. It's really quite busy over there. Parks and Rec, we had our meeting they had their meeting last week, which I'm ex officio to. They figure they're going to end the year with about a $30,000 deficit in, or off about 30,000 from where they were last year. When you look at out of town seasonal passes, they usually sell 400 plus a year, so that's in excess of $40,000. So it's pretty obvious where the deficit arose there. They pretty much sold out daily the daily out of non-resident passes this year. They did have some money left over from last year, or in that account that they didn't expend last year, and with the money we got for Cheney Park, the parking issues there with the construction. So they did have a little contingency to cover that. Sticking with Parks and Rec and some positive news, there's going to be a light parade this year. Actually, not really a parade. They're going to set up all the floats in McCook's up at the top and ring around the area up at the top where the grass is, so people will be able to drive in their cars and actually drive through and look at the floats. So this year the float operators will be the cold ones, the observers will be the warmer ones. There's also going to be a holiday stroll right after Thanksgiving. That's usually the Saturday after Thanksgiving. There's going to be some alterations. The lighting of the tree won't happen normally the way it does. Santa will ride by in a car. Obviously, people won't be able to get in line for him. So some positive things as well. And that pretty much covers my report, unless you have any questions. The COVID thing, obviously, that's of concern. The state's hovering in their daily. Today it was right about 2% were for testing positive compared to about 4 weeks ago when it was about 0.5%. So some concerns there, but I believe the state is trying very hard to get that under control. That's it.
Okay. Any questions for the Deputy First Selectman?
Yes, Kevin. Thanks for filling in on the details about the light parade and such. I'm wondering, with a holiday that's coming up even closer, has the Board of Selectmen looked at trick-or-treating and whether there could be a contactless drive-through trick-or-treating?
I have something. We got something today, and actually yesterday, because I mentioned it. I was ex officio to Board of Ed last night. There's some directions from Connecticut Department of Health regarding trick-or-treating, and it says trick-or-treating is a high-risk activity. They do not recommend the trick-or-trunks at all, or the drive-through too. They're recommending that if you door-to-door is the highest risk they consider, because you have to have a mask on, you're putting your hand in the bag, so they recommend if you are going to do something like that, social distance. If someone is trick-or-treating, wearing your mask, your costume mask does not supplement the surgical mask or whatever you might have for protection. You'd have to wear that over it. They recommend absolutely no rubber masks. probably because of the perspiration or something like that, and the heat, and then putting another mask on top of it. They recommend if you are going to have trick-or-treaters come to your house, you set up, it's, I'm just going to recommend a trade. Just for use a hand sanitizing station outside your house. So it's a lot of recommendations, and it just basically says the thing that jumped out at me is traditional trick-or-treating is a high-risk activity. I thought about my house. What I might do is cut a bag, dump the candy into a thing, and then as people come, rather than put their hands into a bag, have one of those reaching sticks to take one out and drop it in their bag or something like that as they come, which is about, you keep that as about 6 feet. But no, that's just the CDC and DPH recommendations right now, Connecticut Department of Health recommendations right now. And it also says, parents or guardians should limit the number of homes their children visit and stuff like that. So my guess is we're hoping for some more guidance in that area too. I mean, I don't think we'll do what happened last year, but we might urge parents to use caution. Don't let children go in big groups. That's one of the recommendations here. What I could do is I could forward this so it would be available online, possibly on the town website or something like that.
Okay.
There's a bunch more recommendations, but I think I'll stop there.
Okay. Any other questions for Kevin this evening? I have a question for you, Kevin. Back in
Sure.
January, the first selectman had indicated there was a tremendous amount of interest in the Bob's Discount Furniture Store, and I really haven't seen or heard anything since January. I know it's probably slowed down considerably with COVID, but any news on that front?
Not that I know, but I'll find out and make sure I get back to you on that. But I haven't heard of anything myself either, but I'll see if I can find out. I know there was some interest within the last few months on the smaller, the pit building they had there, or they used to have they used to call it the pit, but I haven't heard anything. But let me check, see if I can find out anything for you.
And any news that you can provide us, because even last month, there was an indication that there was a large interest in developers coming to East Lyme that would potentially bring lots of jobs here, potentially, want to develop some facilities in light industrial zones.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could just get updated on that,
Sure.
That would be terrific.
Okay, I'll see what I can find out and make sure it's made available for your next meeting.
Okay, Kevin, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so if there's no additional questions for Kevin, we can move on to the Finance Director's report. Anna?
Yeah, good evening. So I'll just talk a little bit about the summary report that you have. I think through September, at this point, it's fair to say that we're holding our own. Our percent of revenues of what we projected is, a tad bit higher than it was last year. And the same with our larger revenue, taxes this year. Our expenditures are actually a little bit lower than they were at this time last year. During the month, of course, our larger revenues that we took in are in the tax category. We had a good month with building permits. I believe that we took in the permit for the Rocking Neck Village apartments that are going in town. So that's why it's a little higher than normal. Last month, the conveyance taxes are still coming in. We're doing good with the landfill, our town clerk fees. Our expenditures for the month, we paid our quarterly workers' comp and liability insurance premiums, and also we paid out the IT tech support contracts for the town, the regular one and then the one for the police. In terms of revenues, when I look at trying to look back at like where we are this year, where we were last year. Although we're currently doing okay relative to what we budgeted in the prior year tax categories and in the interest and lien current and prior year taxes, we are a little bit lower this year than we were last year. But I would, attribute that to what's going on with the COVID, and it may be more difficult for some people to make payments than in the past. We are doing very good with our building permits, the conveyance tax, the town clerk's fees, and the landfill, which I've already highlighted. At the end of September, I also looked at, like trying to do an estimate for where I think we'll be at the end of this year. And as I've said in the past, what I typically do is I look at what we've collected year to date, and then I look at the months from the prior year remaining and kind of fill in the blank, if you will. And what I did this time is I used the lower of meeting our targeted projected revenue for the year, because most of the revenues from October 1st through the end of June were, would be substantially higher than what we budgeted. So I took the conservative approach and just said, okay, we'll meet our targeted. So at the end, it ends up, my calculations show that we're going to use a little over 600,000 of the 900,000 that we applied in fund balance to balance this year's budget. Again, I'm just, we're 3 months into the fiscal year. We still have, 9 more to go, and I'm trying to be as conservative as possible with end of year estimates, but at the same time, kind of want to see where, we may end up. In terms of the expenditures, one thing I wanted to bring up is I've had some discussion with Mr. Bergaw with regards to the tree warden budget that we have. We did increase this year to $50,000 because everyone recognizes that we do have a need throughout the town to, get rid of dead trees. When we had that storm, I think back in August, the phones and the complaints, rang off the hook relative to what everyone saw in town. So, we have this big list. And what Joe is thinking is that possibly in the spring, he may come back to the boards and ask for some contingency funds, to meet tree cutting needs. He had indicated, I asked him, I said, well, can you give me some kind of an estimate to let the board know? And he was thinking perhaps about $25,000. That's his estimate at this point in time. He's going to use the remaining funds that are currently in the budget to get us through to the spring, and then in the spring come back and ask for some more money. I'll also mention that he has tagged 2 trees on the town hall property. One tree, which is right in front of the town hall. That tree is, I guess it's rotting. I will say that in the storm we had in August, my office is in the front of the building near that tree. And I had a moment where, wow, what's happening? A big branch broke off the tree, and it didn't fall on the building, but nonetheless, this is starting to happen, and it's a concern, and we want to make sure we take care of it. So at some point, I believe at the end of this week, the period of you have to publish a notice on the tree. So when we can get the tree contractor out to cut it down, that will be removed. The second tree is in the back of the parking lot. It's looks the same way. So just to point that out. So that's an area where we may need some additional funding. I did note that in the dispatch budget, their overtime is at 58% expended. However, the part-time account is at 14% expended. So what that's telling me is they can't get enough part-timers to fill the shift, so they have to have the full-timers in. So we would look to use some of the part-time funding. I haven't had a chance to touch base with the chief to see, whether or not we would need any additional funding come the end, towards the end of the year. I looked at both Niantic and Flanders Fire, and based on their budgets, they may be a little short at the end of the year, but that's hard to say at this point. But they're running a little close and a little over, year to date. Did notice Public Works overtime is a little high. However, due to some retirements and all of that, they'll be able to handle that within the regular salary account. I also wanted to mention that while Mr. Siri had mentioned that we are using some tax department staff when they're available to assist in the town clerk's office. So once we get through the election, I'll come back to the boards and ask them to allow transferring funds from the tax department to the town clerk's department so that it reflects what we actually expended in the town clerk's office for assistance, because we do have the funds to pay the employees in another section of the budget, similar to what we did in the Parks and Rec department. So, and then the only other thing, I did include an estimated fund balance report. I did include the report reflecting really as of 6/30/20. What I will do going forward is the estimated unassigned fund balance unaudited at $7.9 million. I will use that as the beginning unaudited balance and then use this year's budget to estimate where I think we may end up this year. Now, when Mr. Newton reported to the board, he did note the little over $1 million deficit that they're projecting at this point in time. He did talk about they have a budget freeze and hoping to come up with 400,000 of that projected shortfall, if you will. And he alluded to using the funds that the Board of Ed returned at 6/30/20 to the town to handle the remaining portion of that deficit. So their return amount was about 575,000. So if in fact this is something that we're going to do to deal with the issue this year with the board's shortfall, then that would reduce the unassigned fund balance from the 7.9 to more like 7.44 million. So I just wanted, to point that out to the board. The other thing that I wanted to mention, I did include in your packages an update of the CNRE fund. And I will, I just wanted to talk about, there are 3 accounts that during the course of the year we collect revenues, and they're all on page 2 of the report if you wanted to take a look at that. So the first one is the 3rd account down, and it's called LOSIP Reserve Town Clerk. So we used some of the funds that were available, 136,000 to be exact. We used to fund some of the capital projects this year, and there was a $10,000 balance left. However, at the end of last fiscal year, we collected $7,674 in the town clerk's office that, is relative to this account. So I put those funds in this account. So that total balance of $17,664 includes the revenues that we collected last fiscal year. The next account is actually 2 down, called Proceeds from the Sale of Vehicles. I increased that account by $2,300 because that's what we took in last fiscal year from the sale of vehicles. And then, of course, the next account, Police Vehicles and Equipment from Fees. Last fiscal year, we collected $157,530 in fees relative to the outside police jobs. And so I increased the balance in that account by that amount. So, but you know that when we purchase their new vehicles, that's where we charge the, the financing plan payments to. Right now, we have about $8,000 coming out of that account to make those monthly payments, which is about $96,000, for the total year.
Excuse me, Anna, which line item are you on? Which CNRE account?
Okay, so that's police vehicles and equipment from fees. It's right below the sale of vehicles account.
First page, second page, third page.
Well, they're all on the second page.
It's the fifth line down, Camille.
Okay, gotcha. I was looking too far. Okay, thanks. Just a slight suggestion, Anna, for this report. Can you add a column to the left of the account ID and just add the line number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7?
Oh, sure. Okay, got it. Yep.
Might be, yeah, that'll be really easy for us to follow along with you.
Okay, got it.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
thank
a good
you.
idea. Okay. And then the other thing, right below those accounts that I was just talking about are the LoCIP project accounts. And so we just finished with the Niantic and the Flanders Fire Department parking lot. So we submitted, our expenditures to the state, and we're awaiting reimbursement on those two projects. And I'll note that the Niantic parking lot and septic system project, we did not use what we estimated the project to cost, $70,000. We have about $20,000 left over. So when we sent the report into the state to request our reimbursement, we checked the box that said project complete. Please return the remaining funds to our project so that we, our balance, so we can use them for other projects. And then I'll also note that 3 of the projects that we had included in the capital improvement plan this year, the town hall ceiling replacement, the Darrow Pond Dam project, and replacing the air handlers at the town hall. Those projects we submitted, to the state to get, permission to do them, and they've approved them. So, the balances are in those accounts.
So if we could just back up to the Niantic Fire Department parking lot, you're
Sure.
saying that you submitted the report to the state, and that ordinarily grants are only issued up to the amount that we spend, but you've made a request to keep the remaining balance of $19,309.
Yes. So the way that the LoCIP fund works is every year they come out with, they say, okay, East Lyme, ours is about 118,000. So every year they make available to us $118,000, and we can use them for various capital projects that are within the parameters of how the program works. And that fund is kind of like a CNRE fund, if you will, with the state. Once they allocate the funds to us, the funds stay with us. And so if we estimate a project's going to cost $70,000 and it comes in at $50,000, when the project is done, they close that project out at $50,000 and they put the $20,000 back into our revolving fund so that we can use it for another project.
Okay,
Example, down below, I have the town hall ceiling replacement. We put that in the capital improvement plan at $25,000. It's going to cost us more than $25,000 to get that work done. So when the $20,000 becomes available, and once we get bid numbers and find out what it's actually going to cost us for the town hall ceiling replacement, with funds available, we can ask them to increase a project. So, it works all different ways for us.
So Anna, just a question. Once you get the LoCIP funds, 118,000, you don't have to give it back to the state. You can use it for any project, basically, if it falls within the parameters.
So the state does not give us the money until we spend it. We have to spend it first, and then we submit them our documentation, and then they reimburse us.
Okay.
So
And does it have to be spent within that year then, within a certain time frame?
No, the fund, it's like a perpetual fund. The funds just keep rolling forward, and they're allocated to East Lyme within the state system.
Okay, thank you.
So that's what I wanted to review for the board. If anyone has questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Did the auditor start?
So they came in and did preliminary work, and they're due out the second week of November to finish their field work.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Hi. I have a question or two, Anna. So this actually refers to Jeff's and Mariana's expenditures, or the their sheet here for possible expenditures and all the things that are already encumbered. So some of obviously the PPE has been purchased. That seems to be a done deal. So has there been a FEMA request made, or a request made to FEMA to reimburse those expenses?
So actually, we're working on putting that together now. As I'm delving more into this, a lot of the things that we've spent money on are not eligible under FEMA. So we're just going to have to submit the full amount to the state under the CRRA program.
Okay, so that's and is that's necessarily COVID related at the state level, or no?
So ask your question. I'm not sure I understand.
So the FEMA available funds are definitely COVID related, you know, and it is a narrow, I agree with you, from what I've read, it seems like it's a narrow world of items. So the things, for example, like air purifiers. So that might be something that you'll approach the state on for some kind of reimbursement?
Yes.
Okay. Could you describe that program a bit?
The state program?
Yes.
Yeah, so under the Connecticut CARES Act, the state has, I believe it's $75 million available. And so they have a program where you have to submit your expenses. So you have to submit to FEMA, get your FEMA award letter, and then submit to the state for the remaining portion. However, as I understand it, a lot of the items that we have expended funds on aren't eligible for FEMA reimbursement, so we're just going to submit them directly to the state and request 100% reimbursement. Whereas if we submitted to FEMA and the state, we would FEMA typically reimburses you 75%, so then we would submit the same expenditures to the state, but we would only receive 25% from the state. So the combined reimbursement from the two sources of funds would be at 100%.
So Anna, for this program, the CRRA program, was there a finite amount given directly to the town? Because I know there was, you know, again, there's a million threads of these monies, and that's what I was referring to earlier. But there was that one point when Board of Ed received their second grant, if you will, education-related, COVID-related education expenses. And then the town did, you know, there was a certain amount earmarked to the town directly.
So that amount that was earmarked is the program that I'm talking about.
Okay, now this makes sense. Okay, because so this is great that we're having this conversation, because again, there's a lot of sources, you know, of funding. I mean, there's just, you know, in my mind, just a ridiculous amounts, if you will, but then obviously not for a ridiculous reason, but in very large sums to wrap your head around, you know, nationally, given to the states, and the states giving to localities. So it would be so great to just keep totally track of it as we're going along. So so sort of a half question, half request that, you know, we had talked a little bit about this, but as we're going along, identifying the source of money and the expenditures in question. Because, yeah, that really helps that now we know that some of this that Jeff has presented also may be covered in a different way. There's a reference to it on their page 4, but there's no dollar sum exactly given. So this fills in the hole, so to speak. But I'm wondering, and I'm open to, anyone else's thoughts on the board about this. What would be a good way to do this, to be apprised of this, so we can have a sense of our ability to be reimbursed, and what these particular sources are. A spreadsheet, if we do it, how often would we need to look at it? That's one question. Then the second one I have is, because there's so many sources and it is so labor intensive, I just had a question for your own office, the finance office. Is it something that you feel you're going to need more help on? I was going to ask that of Mariana. I actually forgot that question, but does she need that help too? Because it's not only, filling out all this paperwork for things you're told you're entitled to, but it's also, perhaps looking for other sources, which may not be as, obvious to all of us. So I'm just wondering if that's an issue as well, because, I just read what I read in the, in the public domain, in the newspapers, for example, libraries now. Libraries in the state of Connecticut, $2.6 million is coming their way. So how much of that is East Lyme going to get? Same type of issue. So, but I'm open to some conversation about that, because it seems like it's so important, A, and B, it might be really labor intensive to be, filling out all of this information and filing it and submitting it.
Yeah, the state actually today, they had another a webinar today to talk about, because the state program, everything is electronically submitted now. So, the state the portal, and it was going over how to use the portal and put the information in it. And they only want one person per, city or town to have access to the portal. They don't want multiple users, because they feel that if you have multiple users, then it's not done properly. So it is a challenge. You just have to figure out how to get organized to get it all done.
Okay. Yeah. That's good.
So, Ann Santoro, I'm thinking you're thinking your question wasn't answered exactly?
Oh, I think it was answered for the most part. I'm just, the part about how does the board stay informed,
What kind of tracking mechanism is there? What kind of monthly report we could get to keep us up to date?
Right. And I didn't want to overburden Anna or Mariana with anything else, because to me it's enough to do what they're doing to find this. But I think we as a board need the information, and it may be a good organizational tool too. I don't know, for the respective finance offices. But it seems like every couple of weeks I read about another potential source, and then I feel like I'm losing track of it. Like I read about last week, I read about the libraries, and I thought, well, who's going to follow up on that? For example.
Well, can you track that for us, Ann? Can you track it for us? I mean, if you're, yes, you, Ann Santoro.
Yeah, I can, but I mean, again, it's what I read in the public domain, because I don't necessarily, like if I were on Board of Ed or in the administration, I'd be working more directly, obviously, with State Board of Education and others. And Anna would be working with OPM or whoever you're working with at the state level. But I will funnel information as I get it. I was thinking of calling the library today just to figure it out. But I do think at the official levels of where the requests are made, and also when you officially get the okay from the state that, town X, you're going to get, $900,000 or whatever you're going to get. That's the information I'm looking for, because it's hard for us to start thinking about future decisions if we don't know what we're getting and what we're entitled to. And then I just have this feeling from what I'm reading that there's potentially other resources out there that we may not be totally tapping into, or is there a way to put a little pressure on, and get a little more? Like in that library situation, supposedly based on size of the library and the those that who are the library users, but and so in that, by that theory, our library is used and it's open, and it's been open since phase 2, correct, in the state. So that's a potential source for them that may be helpful, to help with the Wi-Fi, to help with more students going there maybe to during the day to use, etc. So I think Rich has got something.
How about Ann Shapello? I see her hand.
I just have a quick question. So all of the money that we get, maybe through the library program or for all of these programs, is it that we spend the money first and then we seek reimbursement? Is that how they all work, or do we actually get the funds up front?
So these are all reimbursement grants that are being made available. So it's like we spend the money first and then get reimbursed. So on the town side, earlier on, for all of our emergency services, we were getting cleaning supplies and PPE equipment from the state. So every week, the admin in management was tracking how much of all this everybody used, and once a week we could go and there was a pickup once a week, and we would go and get supplies for the town. So that kind of like mitigated what we had to spend on the cleaning supplies and the PPE. And but then since then, when we started opening the town hall, that's when we started making all of the expenditures, and those expenditures are what we can be reimbursed for.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, Ann, I think, for example, the monies coming to Board of Education are allocations from FEMA dollars that are specific. So there's 2 amounts. One was the governor's relief fund, and then another one came through K through 12 designated CARES Act money. But those were based on student population, other criteria. But those are actually more like grants, and that's a good question. Will there be more of those? Because the amount given to the United States, our U.S. Department of Education was like $13 billion or something. So who knows what when this will, how far this could go on for, So, but I think it's worth some sort of an organizational tool, if you will, And my only other question, Anna, just had to do with our own traditional grants that we get. And you mentioned that you feel you're slightly down in revenues when you were discussing the revenue account status report. So, yet taxes looked pretty consistent and a tad higher. So are we behind in time with some of these typical grants, or or tuition from other districts? Are we is anything sort of obvious?
No, because so we're just so with regards to tuition, we're really just completed. So September is completed. We're not quite finished with October. So once the month is completed, then the Board of Ed sends the bill to Salem, and then we get, they send us their check. So it typically takes until like maybe the beginning of November before we start seeing any of the tuition checks. And the only state grant really that was due is the town aid road funds, and that came in on time. So the other grants, come later in the fiscal year. So, and I've heard nothing that there's going to be any delay in paying us our grants.
That's good. That's good. So back to our topic that we spent a little more time on, the whatever tracking tool we'll use. So yeah, I'm just open to any suggestions as to what might be helpful. Maybe it just, something based on, Mariana has that piece on page 4, maybe we create something similar, and this we're given, and it doesn't necessarily have to come with a particular meeting. It could just come as you create it and email it to us, as certain funds come to us, or as you've completed, FEMA reimbursement process. But I think that would just be helpful, because I'm beginning to, other than the certain of the Board of Ed ones that stay in my head because it did affect, their budget this year to some extent. I can't keep it in my head, I can't wrap my head around it. So that might be helpful. Does anyone have a thought about that?
Yes, my thought that is, if you're asking Anna to produce some information, maybe you can help her out and come up with a format of what you would like to see, rather than her try to interpret what you're saying.
Yeah, that's fine. I can offline have some discussion with her, and basically for the rest of the board, it's just going to be identifying the sources of revenue, and if they have limitations too, to understand that, and then expenses that we feel we should be reimbursed for, if it's present, future, whatever, just kind of a tracking device. But yeah, we can have a conversation. That's it.
I was going to say, I think if you do it, I think it has to be something that makes it easy on Anna, because I don't think we should burden her. She's got a lot on her plate now with all of these grants and everything else. So when you talk to her, however it works best for you, Anna, do you know what I mean? Like when you're, so it's like, oh, here's an extra thing I can just print down and that's it, versus.
Well, in terms of the expenditures, we do have, we did create a COVID tracking ID for people to enter on their purchase orders. So provided that the departments enter, click on when they do their purchase orders, if they're COVID related, that's a simple expenditure report to run.
Okay.
That's not, wouldn't be burdensome, but it's only as accurate as, the person that starts the process makes it.
And then that gets to be critical for you, because if you have to first incur the expenses before you can get reimbursed, if they aren't accounting it accurately, it'll make it impossible for you to be able to figure out what to file for reimbursement.
Well, I send everyone a copy of the report and ask them to confirm that everything they've spent is on the report. So, puts the burden back on them.
Right.
And how often do you have to submit for reimbursement? Is it like monthly or is it quarterly?
Quarterly.
Quarterly, okay.
Okay.
So maybe it would be quarterly, then you would say, this is what I'm seeking reimbursement on, so we know. Would that be helpful, Ann Santoro?
Yeah, I think that's a good starting place. If that works for Anna's bookkeeping purposes and tracking purposes.
We'll figure something out.
We'll figure it out, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for Anna Johnson with regard to the finance reports? Seeing nobody having any more questions, we'll press on to new business. First up being a special for Human Resources in the amount of $3,576.18. So I'll just start out by saying it's a little awkward that the first selectman isn't here this evening. I had some, since the Human Resources Director reports directly to the first selectman, I had some questions for him. I'm not sure that they'll be able to be answered tonight. I wouldn't mind putting this on to next month's meeting so that he could be present and answer the questions. How does everybody else feel about that?
I guess that maybe the question is, since the deputy first selectman is here, I don't know if he would be able to answer those questions, or if Anna could. So maybe we could see if your questions can be answered. If they can't, then, you know, if they can't be answered, then we probably should table it.
Right. Okay. All right. Fair enough. So let's get started. Anna, would you? Who is it? Kevin or Anna? We have Rebecca on the phone. Who would like to speak?
I could start off, Camille, and then, you know,
Great.
between the three of us, we can try to answer any of your questions, and if not, you know, we'll do our best.
Okay, Kevin.
As you know, this was brought to us too, and we had some concerns as well for the increase too, but I think Anna and Becky did a good job of explaining to us why this additional money was needed this year. There's been some, as we all know, a lot of unexpected type of requirements because of COVID now. And we've had significant amounts of retirements. Just in the last month, we've had people from Public Works, 2 firefighters and so forth like that, which means we're now bringing other people in as well. So there's been a lot of work there too. And what I think Becky has been really trying to do is trying to upgrade basically our punch in and punch out tracking records for using time off and so forth like that is somewhat antiquated. I think she's trying to bring that up to where it's much more user friendly, where people don't have to, for instance, right now, if somebody wants a day off, they have to submit a slip and triplicate. I think those are the things that she's trying to address to improve the performance of that. So I think this will be some expenditure of money right now. But I think with some of the improvements that'll come out, it'll be a savings in a lot of other things as well. You know, we still do pay stubs, things like that, things that, you know, would save us money from having to disperse those and print them up. I think that's it. And I think she's done a good job in the summary as to why she also needs those extra hours too. So we had some concerns. Mr. Salerno, Roseanne brought up some concerns too, and we felt that they were all fairly well answered. So if you have any others, we'd be more than happy to try and answer for you.
Does anybody have any questions for the Deputy First Selectman regarding this appropriation request?
Well, I guess I'm just confused. How many, or need clarification, how many hours does the HR manager work now? Like a week?
And I'll let you take that one.
It's a 30-hour position.
So if the board will remember, we less than a year ago, we increased the hours for this position from 20 to 30. That was not even a year ago, last January.
So would this increase it then up to 33 hours? Is that what this is?
Yes.
So it's like, you know, to fund up to like 3 hours a week. So like maybe 1 week she would work 32 hours, and maybe 1 week she would work 34 hours. It depends on how the workload plays out for the week, kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
So is this a one-shot 3,000, or is this increase moving forward forever?
Pete, I think the plan is once the hours are increased, they will stay at that current level of 33,
Okay.
up to 33.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if nobody else has any questions, I'll ask Kevin or Anna to address my questions. First off, at our January meeting, Ann Chikello had mentioned to the first selectman that COG was putting together authorizations for grant money for a regional HR director to help with one-off type of situations. So on the list of, I guess, the additional responsibilities that the HR manager has on this list, a lot of it relates to COVID. What can you tell us about the hiring of the regional HR director from COG that was supposed to be made available to us free of charge for the first year?
I don't have an answer for that, Camille, I'm sorry. I don't know if Anna does.
Anna?
I don't.
Okay, I'm sorry, that one we cannot answer, I apologize.
So I really can't answer that either, except that something in my memory is telling me that person was more of an overall grant writer and not necessarily like totally HR directed, but I could be wrong. But I understand, because
I think if I'll just stop you. I think, Ann, you're wrong. I think there were 3 positions they were looking at. One was a grant writer for $80,000.
Okay.
One was a regional building inspector. One was a regional human resources / staff consultant for $80,000. So there was a position dedicated full time for our area to use for, you know, the ebbs and flows of what's going on. So.
Okay.
Not having an answer, I don't really feel comfortable moving forward with that this evening. I believe that they are having a meeting 2 days from now. Perhaps somebody from the Board of Selectmen, or perhaps even our first selectman, can attend that meeting so
For
that
COG?
he can, the COG meeting,
Yeah,
the regional HR
well, he's the
director.
he's the regional, he's the chair of the Southeast
Right.
Pacific COG, so.
So we have a pressing need. I would think that it would make sense for him to show up to that meeting 2 days from now to get an update on, you know, a potential use of that resource.
Okay. We'll make sure someone is tuned into that meeting to get that answer for you, Camille, and for your board.
The other questions I had were relating to all of the statistics that you provided to us with the number of retirements. There's no comparative data here. There's what's going on right now, but it doesn't say how that increased from, say, last year or even a 5-year trend. And as I've explained, we've already increased this position from 20 to 30 hours a week. We've actually decreased hours for positions in town hall that are extremely busy, like the building department and the number of permits that are coming through. How are we managing the increased workflow in that department by having decreased the hours for one of those individuals in that department? How are we managing that?
Right now, I haven't heard any requests from building at all for any additional assistance or anything like that. So and that's the best answer I can give you right now on that one.
Okay, so we don't have any idea how the workflow is being managed. The only thing that I know is that I have heard from people trying to get, waiting for their building permits to be approved, for the paperwork to be filed. Things, you know, are backlogged, and, you know, that's a consequence of having to try to save some money in our budget. So I'm not sure what makes it fair in one area and not another area. So these are my questions. I don't, you know, I appreciate your taking those questions back and getting answers to us, but again, I don't feel comfortable making a decision without having all the information.
Okay. I don't know if Rebecca has anything she'd like to add. Becky has anything she'd like to add.
Let's see. Becky, I'm trying to unmute you just to see if there's anything you'd like to add to the discussion.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I had, you know, some data prepared to present. I would take any questions on, what is going on in HR and why there is, a need for additional funds.
Well, so I think the one question you're probably not able to answer with regard to resources made available to us through COG, but the other questions I had were trending data. Where's the trending data? I see some numbers were referenced in this request. For example, 2 distributions for retirement packages. How does that differ from 2019, from 2018?
Well,
where's the trend?
So what it says is Q4 2019, 2 distributions. So far for 2020, there's 7.
Right. So how many were there last year? How many were there the year before that?
Well, I can get that data, but Camille, I tell you anecdotally, and I think you heard it from Mr. Siri and Ms. Johnson, everyone's talking about the uptick in retirements, how it's impacting the other departments, whether it's overtime and staffing. So there is definitely an uptick. I don't have the data, unfortunately. I can get you that, but there's definitely an uptick in the number. And you could, if you want to ask Anna or Kevin, they both know. I mean, we've had several policemen, firemen, other elderly workers. Our workforce is aging. It's a natural thing that's going to happen, and it's going to continue to grow. If you need the data, we can certainly get you the data. I also would add is that not only the volume, but what I'm doing with the process we do with the retirees. I've taken that to a new level. There is lots of communication with the retirees, helping them understand how the process works, making sure there's documents. We had several situations where people went through the process and decided not to retire. So there's a lot of additional things we've done with the retirement process. We have a lot of issues with past retirees calling in, wanting to know about distribution. So there's all of those types of things that go with it. And then on the flip side, with all the retirements and then, just normal terminations, you have people find new jobs, is the uptick in new hires. I've enhanced the new hire process. We now have a very nice orientation process for every new hire. I spend an hour at least with them. They have a nice package that they walk away with all their payroll documents, their pension plans, their health care, all those types of things. The COVID certainly has added a tremendous strain on the department. The amount of investigating and researching so we as a town can understand what we should do for our employees, whether it's keeping them safe, knowing how to apply time off, all those types of things has been tremendous. And again, that's another area where it's going to continue to grow.
Would you say this time of year, October, November, is a spike in the requirements of your position due to rolling out like new healthcare plans, making sure information gets into the hands of all the employees?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, Camille, because that is one thing that has, again, tapped on the resources. I don't know how long we were self-funded, we were under the same healthcare plan, but within the last 2 years, we not only went from being self-funded to the private part and a carrier, and now we've switched again to a new carrier, which again causes a ton of communication with the employees, our consultants, the healthcare plans to make sure everyone transitions over smoothly. And while I empower employees to do things on their own, give them resources to do it, a lot of it can't be done because healthcare at best, and I think everyone knows this, is complicated and hard to navigate through. So, I try to serve as that middle person, that messenger, to help our employees get the information they need. And that can be very, very stressful because if you're dealing with, a very serious health condition and there's a chance that you can't get a referral or an approval, our employees need help.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, so there's a big list of things we can, and again, I think to Kevin's point is I'm trying to bring a different light to human resources in the town of East Lyme. You know, I'm not just there to, you know, administer reports and data and things like that. We're trying to really be human resources. And again, uptick in personnel policy issues, dealing with the unions, dealing with our labor attorney, all take quite a bit of time on my part.
Right, understood. Part of the reasoning for increasing your hours last year from 20 to 30 were also to tackle some documentation of policies and procedures. I see you have listed here that that you are working on some of those, and you had mentioned something verbally tonight that's not on this list. Could you refresh my memory what that was? You were working on what was it, payroll process?
No, I mentioned.
Oh no,
I think I
time
mentioned.
card. Time card, right?
Yeah, so we're trying to enforce policies and follow laws. And sometimes doing that, navigating through that can be tough. So I have been working with the department managers and Ann and her team as we try to navigate to get the process, you know, better and more efficient for, you know, our employees and our managers, and for, you know, our staff, like the payroll administrator that works on those things.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't doubt the need. I've said that all along. But when we just finished the budget process not too long ago, and we did talk about a hiring freeze, and so I think that in order to get this to move forward, maybe if some of those questions can be addressed, maybe we can revisit this next month. And what does the rest of the board feel in that regard?
Yeah, I think that if you want the questions answered, then we should table it and bring it up next month. And then hopefully at that point, then the first selectman, you know, could be there maybe and answer the questions that you have.
Okay. Does that sit well with the rest of the board? We'll table this for a month.
Well, I think you can table. I just would want to know two things. One, the specific question concerning the resource at COG, is it that person would be available and do some of this work, or is it a backup? What, you know, I guess we need to explore that. I mean, that seems, I think, as the first selectman had mentioned with respect to the grant writer, kind of don't hold your breath. It might be a resource, but it may not really be effective because there are so many towns vying for information. So I guess we need, you know, we could definitely use some specifics on that. As far as what you're asking, Camille, of Becky, so specifically under number 1 in the summary that we received, you're asking for information prior to 2019, where she's talked about distribution packages, 2 in the year of 2019 and 7 to date for 2020. So you want her to go back in time? Yeah.
I'd like a few key data points as to how the work has exponentially increased. I mean, and has it exponentially increased faster than the rate that we've already increased the hours? So some very pointed data to substantiate this. And I realize it's only 3 hours more. You know, but it would be permanent, right? And so if some of these are just hurdles that we have to get through, my feeling is let's lean into COG and see, well, you know, what kind of help we can get from them. And Santora, you said yourself, like you're looking for a spreadsheet so we don't lose sight resources available to us. It's a shame if every other municipality is leaning into these resources and we're not.
Yeah.
We're just losing out. Our taxpayers.
Yeah, I think that's,
are
I mean,
losing out.
I think there is possibly a resource. I'm just saying it's, you know, my memory is that these are admirable things that the COG is doing, but the practicality may still be in question. But we'll see. We can ask that question.
And that's fine.
Yeah, we can ask him, and he can, you know, that's his territory. He'll know the answer. He'll know the facts there, I'm sure. And then I just want to be clear for Becky's purposes that we are specific with her as to what we are asking for additional information, because I wouldn't want a situation where, we're asking, ABC, and then then when she's here, we're asking XYZ later. So if we can kind of hone in on exactly what we're asking of her, I'm sure that will be helpful.
Okay, so you know what I'll do, so we don't take up any more time this evening, is I will get in touch with Becky, and I'll give her some specific data points that I'm looking for to bring to the next meeting.
And we can reach out. COG has an executive director, so we can reach out to him over the next couple of days just to try and get some background as soon as we can too on that position.
Okay.
Because if it doesn't, we can let you know what the progress is on the implementation or not of that position. So I'm glad you brought that to my attention.
And by the way, I know this isn't, it's a little off topic, but if they hired a regional building inspector and our inspections are spiking and we're not delivering good customer service to our taxpayers, maybe we can lean into that position as well to help out with some of the building.
I actually wrote that down, Camille. So
Good.
Great minds think alike. So.
Terrific. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yes, so I think Peter DeRosa had a question.
Two comments. One is for the data points that you're talking about, Camille, the question that I would have is, using the COG resource, is the number of human resources hours we have per the related to the number of employees the town has. Are we above the mean, in the area, the Waterford and the Stoningtons, or below? So I know there's a ratio that they use, so many HR people for so many employees. I'm just wondering how we sit with that.
Yeah, for municipalities, that's a great data point, Peter. Rebecca, did you understand that data point that Peter suggested?
I do understand, because I happen to know for two towns, Waterford, they have a director and an HR person, and the same thing within Stonington, they have a director of administrative services and also an HR person full-time that work under them.
So kind of a ratio of those to the
Yep.
number of employees?
Right, and they're similar size as us.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I recall the last discussion we had, I thought we were low. We seem to be low on that ratio.
We are low.
I don't know what the numbers are. My second point, in terms of the COG resources, my suspicion is that the COG resources with HR and building permits are more for global, large oversight types of things, and I don't think they're just staff that you can tap into when you have 3 retirement people that you're behind on and pull in someone to do day-to-day work. I can't imagine.
No, I'm not, well, again, we're not talking about day-to-day work. I think I specifically mentioned some of the work that's been generated as a result of the COVID.
Right, but I'm just saying, I wouldn't get my hopes up that they're going to be able to come in and.
Well, listen, if we're paying dues to this organization and we're lending the resource of our first selectman to chair that committee, and we're not getting anything out of it, I mean, then we need to reevaluate that relationship, perhaps.
Well, I'm very familiar.
Just ask.
Yeah, absolutely ask. I'm just wouldn't get too excited. So.
Yes, Rich Steele.
Yeah, Camille, looking at this list of different activities, I know that we've changed our IT support contract for the police and the emergency management and the fire departments, etc. Some of these almost look like they could be IT functions, the development of the spreadsheets and stuff. I'm not sure if our IT staff has any wiggle room to be able to support, or that contract that we've got with what's the name of the place on
Star.
Yeah, Star. If that might be able to provide some support for some of this. The other thing that's just one general observation. The other thing is, in that first paragraph, up to 3 hours per week for 38 weeks at $31.37. Is that 3 hours that are roughly $10 an hour, or is it 31.17? It must be $10 an hour, right? Somewhere around there.
Hannah?
No, it's the $31 an hour.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay,
Yep.
dokie.
$31 an hour times 3 hours per week times 38 weeks,
Gives
you know,
us-
remaining. And another thought, I'll just end this with a final thought in that before we appropriate dollars into this account, I've had this discussion with Anna Johnson before. Sometimes I think it's really beneficial to just let a particular department be over budget until the end of the year. I mean, if certain work needs to be done and we're over budget, just like overtime for the police or firefighters, you know, that happens before we have a chance to approve it. We're just on the back end saying, yeah, let's move the dollars. Well, we don't have to do it right as it happens. We can wait towards the end of the year. Yes, Anna?
So with waiting until the end of the year, if towards the end of the year, if there aren't sufficient funds within the departmental budget, our system will not allow us to finish processing payroll. So for example, if you were $500 short and you didn't have $500 in another budget account in your department, we wouldn't be able to complete that week's payroll until that $500 was put in the account to make it, you know, not overextended. Because the accounting systems are, you know, for municipalities are designed by nature not to allow expenditures that, you know, not to allow you to be over budget.
Okay, but you're saying that that's at a top level, at a top, like a company-wide level, right? If
No,
you're,
departmental.
it is departmental?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
So, and you know, the like a lot.
So Rebecca hasn't been working any additional hours? She hasn't been working any additional hours, like to handle this workload in the past month or two?
Rebecca, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, I have been, and I've been just recording as comp time because the work needs to get done.
So that's an agreement that you have with the finance director?
Well, first selectman and the finance director until we could, you know, come to the meeting and request the appropriation.
But okay, so the comp time really is that, so in a low period, say between Christmas and New Year's, you know, you could take your time there without having to take vacation time. There are other ways to handle it, you know, especially if the work is cyclical, like around November health benefits time. But let's just talk about this next month again. Let's get the answers. I'm sure that we'll come to an amicable solution next month when the first selectman is able to attend our meeting. Sound reasonable, everyone? Okay.
Yes, sorry.
All right, thank you. All right, Rebecca, thank you for all the information and the clarification on the need. Really appreciate your time tonight. We'll see you next month.
Yes, thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Good night.
Okay, good night. With that, we'll move on to the next item. What time do we have? 8:45, I think. Let's just push through and try to get the meeting done by 9, if that's okay with everybody. We have one more agenda item. It's the allocation of additional FEMA funds for $327,046.72.
Camille, we discussed this at our last Board of Select meeting. This is the money that you removed from the initial request we had. And I know several of us were very positive of some of the areas in which you had identified. But right now, the police department is trying to fine tune the exact cost right now too. And the quicker they do it, the better too, because right now looks as though, depending upon the speed in which you get your request in for the body cams, you'll get anywhere from 30 to 50% reimbursement. So we're trying to get that done very quick, but we didn't want to identify the money until we had a good firm figure, which is why I put it in contingency. Same thing with the $50,000. Mark has reached out. I believe Sandy has contacted the public trust, asked them to come for a presentation to us for that money, and then we could then come up with an official request to allocate it to them. A little bit more clarification from them as well. Same thing with the $115,000. I think we'd like to hear from Joe Bergwah to see what the exact plans are for sidewalks and so forth like that. Not that it's not a good idea, because I think we have seen some repair in that, and there are some current sidewalks that definitely need repair in town, and we could definitely use some additional funding in that area. So it wasn't that we didn't like the requests. As I said, I think they were very good, but until we have firm costs, we just wanted to have that money placed into an account so it's just not sitting there. That's it. Anna, do you have anything to add to that, or?
I think you explained everything
Okay.
rather well.
And thank you for those suggestions too at your last meeting. I think, we do have that need for several of these items too. I don't think there's any argument in that area.
Okay. Do any of the board members have any questions for the deputy first selectman about the strategy with rolling this all into contingency?
And our feeling is too, is you guys are aware, your board is aware, it can't be expended until it comes back to an appropriation process anyway. So it's not as if
Yes.
And Kevin, you were saying that you're going to have Joe Bergwah come and present to you about the sidewalks, and somebody come in on the from the East Line Public Trust.
Right, to have them come in to, because, they've identified they'd like to see the main scene. So have them, they did make a request to you. They have to funnel that official request really through us, and then from us to you. And same thing for Joe. Joe has a layout of what his plans are for sidewalks and sidewalk repair. So I think it'd be a good thing for the board, our board, to hear that. I mean, I've seen his plan, but I know there's a few of our board members that don't know what the plans are for extending sidewalks in some areas. And I think that's a discussion we need to have before we allocate the funds, because we keep talking about sidewalks, and, especially along Gorton Pond and so forth like that. I think that's a discussion we have before we get the money to that fund, or then we can justify putting the money in that fund for the public.
Will they be coming in the next month or two, or do you know the time frame?
No, I don't. I can get back to you on that one. I know the public trust, we're hoping to hear from them probably either their second meeting this month. Well, actually, probably won't be next week. It'll probably be in November.
Okay. Thank you.
As far as Joe Bergwah, I'll talk to him tomorrow and see if I can get an answer for that.
Okay.
Yes, Rich.
Yeah, Kevin, you mentioned the land trust. There's a person who had noted to me that the webcam is not functioning, and I've tried going through. I don't know if this is an appropriate place to bring this up or not. I didn't know if it was maintenance of the boardwalk and the beach area security, and I've written to people in different departments.
You mean the webcam that for the boardwalk and so forth?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's not functioning, and I don't know how we get that functioning, and if that would kind of come out of boardwalk maintenance, or.
I would think that would probably come out of maintenance, but let me touch base with Dave Putnam, and or possibly that might be under the police department. Let me do some research on that, Rich, and have an answer. I'll make sure you guys have an answer for that.
Okay.
See what it would take to get that repaired as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, when I had corresponded with Chief Finkelstein, he was aware that it was down, but he wasn't quite sure who was responsible for the maintenance on that.
Okay, that's an easy one to to take care of as far as identifying how we get that fixed. But thanks for bringing it to my attention as well.
Sure. Yeah, it's a good tourism thing too. You know, should have a link on the website. So,
Yeah.
thanks.
No, thank you.
Okay, I'll just make a couple of comments about throwing all of the remaining balance of the FEMA funds into a contingency account. I understand about the body cams and not knowing what amount of grant money we'll get and what the true cost will end up getting. So I'm okay with throwing, you know, a good chunk of that money into contingency for body cams in the future. I also think we have to be very careful about maybe putting some money into that contingency for, you know, COVID expenses, maybe education expenses. With the numbers that we saw tonight, it sounds like we may be 50,000 short of what the projection is. So there is some money that could go into contingency to help us with that. The sidewalk, I think you all know how I feel about the $105,000 settlement that we got from Gateway. I think that's travesty. You know, that was not negotiated well. You know, when that sidewalk would have cost the developer $900,000 to put in, and we walk away with 105. I think there's a disconnect there. So I would hope in future negotiations that maybe more members of the Board of Selectmen get involved with that negotiation to do better for our town. And I would like to see at least a portion of this money go towards the sidewalk fund. With that $105,000, we added it to the 10 that was already in there. So now we have $115,000 in a sidewalk fund. I would suggest, Kevin, that maybe you could go back and discuss my recommendation that we target at least $35,000 to go additional to go into the sidewalk fund. That would be a request that I would make. And most importantly this evening, there was an outpouring of support for the East Lyme Public Trust Foundation and supporting the very modest request that they had for $50,000. And the argument came back, well, it's not really that important to set aside money in a fund when we don't need it for, you know, immediate repairs. And so my counter to that argument would be, one, there is currently evidence that the boardwalk does need repairs. I think Rich just pointed one out. We also know that there's several cracks in the concrete. How long will that go before that's repaired? We know that the East Lyme Public Trust Foundation has raised and donated millions of dollars for this project. And to deny them or not entertain their very modest request of $50,000, which is less than 3% of the $1.7 million that we received last month, which we were not entirely expecting at this time, and we didn't know how much we would eventually get. I think not to honor that request is kind of tone deaf on our part, and that's not something that I want to be involved with. So if you feel like they need to parade in front of you again and make that request again, so be it. But I'm not prepared to approve this entire appropriation for contingency without having that in place, that modest $50,000.
Yeah, they just have, you know, we haven't denied them anything. They haven't requested it of the Board of Selectmen yet. And as soon
No,
as they
but
get
we
out,
have, Kevin.
pardon?
But I have. I
know.
have.
And we have, if they come before us, I assure you, we would be more than happy to approve that amount.
So get that
They should be
scheduled.
the ones to come to board, because it's the
Okay.
Board of Selectmen that approve, that, you know, moves it to your board. So, you know, I have no
Absolutely.
problem. I don't think any, excuse me? Oh, okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
So get that scheduled. Kevin, get that scheduled. Have them come
Well-
before you if that's what, you know, you don't need them to parade in front of you to make that decision. The
No,
Board
but
of Selectmen can
they
make the
need to-
decision
they
based
just need
on
to
all of the evidence that's been presented to us up to this point. But if
Well-
that's what you want, fine, get it scheduled and come back to us. You know, that's just I'm one person on this board. That's how I feel. I don't.
No, and here again, I think we're all, in fact, we all are extremely aware of, you know, how much they've done to, the boardwalk probably wouldn't be there right now without their assistance and so forth. But, all we have to do is have them send a request to us. It should come through them to us. That's all. And that's the procedure that is set forth in the town charter. So follow that and, come to us. And they probably don't have somebody come, just a written request to us is all they probably need. And we would be glad to forward that to you for consideration.
Okay. Okay. So with that, we have a choice. We can make a motion as it stands this evening. We can take a vote on it. The current request is to move it all to a contingency fund. And then as the Board of Selectmen, has various requests, it would still come before us and have to be approved before those funds were released. So the decision tonight is whether we want to park the entire $327,000 into a contingency account. So why don't we, I feel good that I've made my position known. So however this vote goes is fine. I don't care. I just had to make my position known. So if somebody would like to read a motion, we can take a vote on it tonight and see where it goes.
I could read the motion.
Okay.
Yeah, so move to approve a special appropriation of the remaining FEMA funding received from storms Irene and Sandy in the amount of $327,046.72 to account 01-01-120-200-500, parentheses, contingency. This resolution is passed under the guidance of Executive Order 7S with no town meeting and being less than 1% of the current budget.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, John Birmingham. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. So if this is voted down, then what happens at that point with the $327,000? Where would it go?
We just don't have a place to place it right now. Anna, you could answer that question better.
So as mentioned, we have actually received the funds. The funds came in on September 24th, which, that's a good thing. So without a place to receive them, I have a revenue that I really can't book any place. I can, if this is not approved tonight, I'll probably just put it in the general fund, book it as a revenue there, and put it on the, have some kind of an account to put it on the, the balance sheet that, it needs to be designated.
So then it would be removed from the general fund and designated to whatever accounts it would go to?
Correct.
Wouldn't you say, Anna, that if you book it as a revenue, right, it just sort of goes into a suspense account until a further determination is made?
Right.
So what that would mean, to answer your question, Ann Chikello, is that if we deny the request tonight, it just simply goes back to the Board of Selectmen. They'll listen to our concerns, and they'll come up with a new appropriation request next month for how to handle it. And hopefully by that time, they'll have scheduled their meeting with the, East Lyme Public Trust. And I don't, I personally would like to see at least $35,000 go into the sidewalk fund and $50,000 to the East Lyme Public Trust. I'm okay with putting the remainder in the contingency fund and having the Board of Selectmen come to us when they're ready to appropriate that somewhere else. I'm okay with that. I think it's a very modest request. So that would be my hope, that they would listen and come back to us with a new recommendation.
I have a question for Anna. If this is voted down tonight, and you, like you said, you put $327,000 into the general fund, what happens if out of that 327, we only use, say, 200 for appropriation. So the other 127,000 just sits in the general fund in an account that's not designated.
Yeah, that would be the case.
So my opinion on this is you have 4 items here that we're assigning certain dollar figures for each line item. If any one of these items could come in at more or less. So the reason I would prefer that the 327 goes into the contingency fund is if these items come in at less or more, you can pull out what is needed from the contingency fund. So we don't have to worry about this line item that's not designated in the general fund. We have it parked someplace where any amount can be used for whatever project you want. It just to me, it's cleaner that way. That's just my opinion.
I'd just like to point out that every year during the budget cycle, we appropriate funds into CNRE accounts, and we have no idea what that's going to cost us. But we put money away every year to go into an HVAC account, into a roof replacement account.
Okay, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about tonight.
You're talking about what?
I'm talking about tonight. I'm not talking about the CNRE accounts.
Right, so I'm saying this is no different, just earmarking funds to go into a CNRE account to make sure that it's used for that intent and purpose. It's not like it's going to be a little bit more, a little bit less. That's not the issue. The issue to me is just listening to the taxpayers and the town people and their desire to have these funds set aside for, you know, a specific reason. I think they've come to us, they've pleaded their case. There have been letters to the editor, there have been letters to us. There has already, you know, there's been a lot of public, you know, conversation about this already. And I just think it's the least we can do. I mean, so I'm not worried about, you know, well, are the boardwalk repairs going to cost $25,000? If it is, let's only give them 25. It's like, no, I mean, there's always going to be repairs that are needed for that. And it's no different than putting aside funds for like the roof replacement, CNRE, or anything that we set aside funds for that we have no idea what the costs are going to be at that point in time.
That's
Just
true.
trying to earmark dollars to appropriate places.
Well, tonight we're talking about the 327,000, as opposed to the 4 line items. So I'm just reiterating, I prefer that it goes 100% to the contingency fund. And if you need whatever for whatever project, and maybe other things, the trees that have to be cut down are going to be an expense. Where's that money coming from? It would be there in this fund, contingency fund, if it's needed.
Don't forget, we already, what's our balance in the contingency fund already? $100,000?
A little
If we
more.
were to, a little bit more than the 100,000. So we've already heard this evening that Joe Burgaw is probably going to burn through his $50,000 budget pretty quickly for, you know, the tree removal expense, and he'll be coming back to us for 25. So we know that our board should remember that $100,000 of what's in contingency currently should be earmarked for that purpose. We need to remember that. Well, we don't, because Anna will remind us at the appropriate time.
Okay, that's just my thoughts. I'd like to hear from the other board members what they think.
Okay, thanks, John.
I'm,
Anybody else?
yeah, I don't know if we're debating process or if we're debating how the money is being allocated. I'm not hearing a lot of disagreement or debate on how the money's allocated. What I'm hearing is the process in which it's happening, and that, to me, is I just want to make that clarification. I mean, I'm hearing that you know, for instance, the $50,000 for, you know, I didn't hear any disagreement about that. I just hear that how it gets there is being debated. You know, not the end product. I just wanted to make that point because you know, I think we're talking how the money is tracked, and we're not really. This is not a debate on how the money is spent. I think it's more of how the money is tracked.
Just a quick question for you, Peter. Did you happen to listen to the Board of Selectmen meeting last Wednesday?
I did not.
You did not. Okay.
So, if I may, I agree with you, Peter. It's really a process question that's in front of us. I actually did listen into that Board of Selectmen meeting. So, you know, basically, we have this 327,000 and change, you know, additional FEMA money that can be allocated in a number of ways. And we have some good ideas here. Our board has articulated them, I think, well. The process, and I think this was pointed out to even those from the East Lyme Public Trust when they appeared before our board, is, you know, make that clear, detailed presentation before the Board of Selectmen. So, I mean, I can think of many departments right now who would, you know, jump and say, hey, we could use a piece of that or a chunk of that 327 as well. So I think it's really incumbent to stick with the appropriate process, which is that the appropriation comes from Board of Selectmen by virtue of presentations by either charitable organizations or department heads or a combination of it. For example, if Dave Putnam and East Lyme Public Trust come and say, you know what, we really do need more money in our account. Let's think about this. Fine, but give us that information as to exactly why and what it's going to go to. I mean, I am not comfortable, as much as all of these are important projects here, important uses of the money and reflect needs. I'm not comfortable until I get, you know, detailed information from someone requesting, whether it's 25,000, 50,000. You know, if we're going to, you know, if we're going to allocate money and do our job as a Board of Finance, I think we need to just appreciate and follow that process. So I don't think there will be much trouble with East Lyme Public Trust once that's done, and perhaps other organizations or other departments that come there. So I think, you know, that's very important, you know, that we follow that. And I think Board of Selectmen articulated that at the last meeting. I think I recall Paul Daigle mentioning, you know, that very point, that it's really just following the process. We know we have this money, let's put it in contingency. It gives us maximum flexibility. Folks and groups can come back, give us the detail, and we will prioritize the needs. And I think that's an exercise that we have to respect, at least from the perspective of Board of Selectmen, that they need to have to do their work and prioritize. And then we can assess that when it comes to us. But I think, you know, detailed information, we ask for it all the time. Here's a good example of it. And I don't think we can leapfrog the process as Peter was discussing. So I'm happy with keeping it maximum flexibility wise with CNRE. There's also a little, sorry, with contingency, got ahead of myself. There's also a little bit of lack of flexibility once you do go into CNRE. And once it goes in there, and if it's not used, it has to revert back to parts of that fund. So we've experienced that, we know that. So I'm happy with, okay, contingency for the moment, and then we start this process rolling, hopefully, as Camille has suggested, and Kevin has said, you know, the East Lyme Public Trust will come and do their presentation ASAP next Board of Selectmen meeting, and then we roll on from there. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, thanks, Anne. Richard, I think you had your hand up. Would you like to contribute comments?
Yeah. As I was talked to at one of our meetings, we don't have the responsibilities of designating where funds are going to go. And there is the process of putting the funding into the contingency, but something that made me a little bit leery when Ann was talking was that, oh yeah, there's going to be lots of departments that could maybe use a little bit of extra help. I think we need to make sure that there's assurances that what we, and it seems like the first selectman from this request for the transfer have in mind is that these were projects that were really brought up, and it seems as though the Board of Selectmen embraced them as well. And I'm okay with money going into contingency. To me, it's almost one of those 6 of one, half a dozen of another, that if it goes to an undesignated general fund, there aren't any restrictions on that. There aren't restrictions on it being in the contingency. That it would be a transfer from the undesignated general fund balance to then go to funding these future projects. For the sake of what I've understood the process to be, it seems as though if there isn't a line item to be able to readily transfer these funds to, the contingency seems to be a good parking lot for it. But I say that with all sincerity, that the projects that are listed here actually be brought forth, and that the Board of Selectmen make every effort to do that, and I trust that they will. And the aspect for the maintenance of the boardwalk, I think that's very important. And you know, we can't just say, oh well, we'll put 10,000 towards this because we've got a repair of $10,000. There's probably, once you start dipping into looking at things, we've heard earlier at past meetings that, oh, there aren't any needs for the boardwalk maintenance. Well, lo and behold, we find out that, yeah, there are needs. And once you start looking at repairing something, you usually see something else that pops up. So I think that the Land Trust is very fair in their request. The other thing is with the body cams for the police, I really want that to kind of be fast forwarded as much as possible, so that even before they move into the new building, if it's possible with the different communications.
I think that's going to happen, Chief. I was making the chief there, Rich. Rich, that's going to be taken care of. That's a high priority, I know.
Right. And you know, one point that it's a little bit off topic, so please forgive me, but the discussion about the Bob's building, you know,
excuse me, Rich, can you save that for board comments?
Oh, okay, I will.
At the end of the meeting, because we just need to wrap up on this appropriation request.
I respect.
Unless it has something to do with 327,000.
No, I respect the Board of Selectmen that they'll follow through with these planned projects. And just for the sake of Anna's bookkeeping and to make life easier, I think parking it in the contingency fund is probably the best place to put it. However, I don't want that to get rated like we've seen the contingency fund get rated for various projects all through the year that would decrease the likelihood of these getting funded. So sorry for the long-windedness.
No, that's great, Rich. Thank you. Thank you for
just one quick point to answer a question you may have, Rich. When I was listening into Board of Selectmen, Sergeant Masick discussed that he's already talked to 3 vendors about the body cams, and is going full steam ahead, and knows that there's about a 30% reimbursement at the state level, and he said it was first come, first served. So I think that's already like in the works. So that was reassuring to me that that's an item that is going to hopefully benefit from the extra FEMA money.
Okay.
Just one other question about the contingency fund. Rich, just to your point about it being rated, any appropriation out of there first has to go through the Board of Selectmen, has to be approved there, and then it comes before us. So any number of requests for monies out of that has to be approved by 2 boards before it can be taken.
And a town meeting. And a town meeting theoretically, if it's over 10,000, except during COVID shutdown.
Yep.
Thanks, John.
Okay, Ann.
Okay.
Okay, I'll make it quick. So I guess I wish that at this meeting that Joe Bergal could have come forward and the public trust today saying, you know, that they'd already presented to the Board of Selectmen and were coming to us today saying this is the amount we want. I would feel more comfortable with that and then say, okay, we'll put the rest in contingency for the police body cams or for whatever else, just put the rest in contingency. But it hasn't happened, and that's just, you know, the nature of politics, I guess, and COVID times. So I think I'm just relying upon Mr. Siri's representation that, you know, he'll talk to Joe Bergal, have him come and present about the sidewalks, and then have the public trust, you know, will hopefully come and present to them, to the Board of Selectmen. So then maybe hopefully next month we can hear about those appropriations, requests for appropriations, and then, you know, anything else that comes up. You know, I would have preferred to have that before us now and then say, okay, you know, yeah, yay or nay, and then put the rest in contingency. But how it is, I guess it is what it is. So
I can't say that there's overwhelming support for the, you know, the public trust request, money going to the sidewalks and for the body cams. So we'll make sure we get that to you as quick as possible.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, can I just make one comment?
Yes.
So in terms of the sidewalks, when I had talked to Joe Bergal about the sidewalks, so you all know that he has that, you know, the great plan for the roads, it's all in place. He doesn't quite have a plan like that in place at this yet for the sidewalks. It's one of his, like, he wants to get it done. And in order to do it properly, he actually has to have one of his staff members walk all the sidewalks in town. He did tell me how many miles we have, which I don't have it committed to memory. So that's kind of like a winter project, if you will, because like the staff are all working on road projects and all of that now. So it is something that he has on his radar. So I would just point that out to you. And in terms of the police and the body cams, since you first introduced it, Richard, at the Board of Finance meeting, I have been in regular contact with the chief, and the project is moving along, but they're not quite ready to come before the boards for the appropriation. But I do believe that he's targeting so that we can come before the boards at the November meetings. So just to kind of get you all in the loop on those couple of items.
Okay. Any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor. No? Seeing no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. Is everybody ready for a vote? All right. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4 ayes. Nay. I say nay. We have 2 nays, 0 abstentions. Motion carries 4-0. Okay, thank you, everyone. All right.
Neil, who are the 2 nays?
I'm sorry, Karen?
Who are the 2 nays? Yourself and?
Oh, I'm sorry, the nays, Ann Chicello and myself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that, we will move on to public discussion. There has been somebody in the attendee room for the entire meeting, God bless him. I don't know if he would like to address the board. You know, if you do, please raise your hand, or I can allow you to talk, to say yes, you'd like to talk, or no. Okay, so I don't see the individual in the public raising their hand to speak or talk to them. So with that, we'll move on to board comments. Rich, this would be your opportunity to maybe speak about Bob's Discount Furniture.
Okay. As we were doing the discussions on the funding of the public safety building, I had repeated it at multiple meetings that it's really deplorable, the conditions that the police are currently under at the building on Main Street. And I know that they have sophisticated communications equipment that relays with the dash cams, etc. But also when I toured the facility, there were only 2 officers in there at the time. And what I would really like to see is, I know there are some functions that need to be in that building, but are there other police functions such as writing their reports or I'm not sure what all their duties entail, but that could be done in a different facility. We have vacant storefronts in town that could be rented perhaps. Bob's, it sounded like things were hot on the market with that, but then it seems like maybe nothing's really going on there. I'm just wondering if we can be creative and try to get most of our police out of that building before the facility on West Main Street is actually ready to move into. I don't know if that's feasible at all, but just throwing it out there.
Okay, Rich, thanks for those comments. I think
You want
that
me to, I can respond to that, Camille, if you'd like.
if you'd like to respond, yeah.
Okay, so Rich, when it comes to reports and so forth like that, you have to access, you have to have basically, there's a lot of security type encryption